This is Bob Bayer, and welcome to my book of the day. And today I'm going to talk about New York Minute, which is the first book in a new series, my latest thriller series. It's a continuation of the Green Beret books, but introducing a new protagonist and going back in time. I set these books back in the late 1970s in New York City. I grew up at that time period in the city, and I remember quite a bit of it. And Will Kane is my new hero. He's sort of a Jack Reacher. Actually, Jack Reacher's background kind of mirrors my own. Technically, the fictional Jack Reacher graduated West Point a year after me. Mother-in-law from Strasbourg, France, was in Beirut when the barracks got hit. My unit was in Beirut, 10 Special Forces. But he's a little weird. He has Asperger's. He's socially awkward, but he's very good at taking action. That's the blurb for it. I use a lot of real history in this book, as you'll see. I talk about the cover of Life magazine. What I'm talking about there is the guy who was the basis for Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now. He was a real Special Forces colonel. Will Kane's the guy who's getting fingered for a murder during wartime, and that's part of the backstory that comes out in the books. Summer of 1977, those of us who lived through that remember it very well. The Bronx is burning. That was the famous thing, which actually wasn't said during the World Series. The Twin Towers of the New World Trade Center, it's only a couple of years old, looming over the city. My uncle was a firefighter down there in the South Bronx during this time period. I lived up in the North Bronx. Son of Sam, one of his first victims, was a girl I went to school with, just a couple blocks away from where I lived at the time. Star Wars came out. I remember seeing that like a couple of weeks before I went into West Point to Beast Barracks. Yankees World Series, Reggie Jackson versus Billy Martin. I don't know. They played somebody, but that was the big fight. Studio 54 opened. I never made it there, but I made it to a number of places. Disco was big, yes. The New York Post. I used to deliver the New York Post door to door before Rupert Murdoch bought it. I talk a bit about the changes he made in 1977 there. This is a handout that laid off police officers used to give out at the Port Authority and out at the airports to people coming to visit New York City with all the cutbacks. Everybody thought the city was really going down the tubes at that point. My father worked for the city, and I remember there were some tense times there. Will Kane was accused of murder during wartime, pretty much drummed out, returned to New York City, goes through a personal tragedy in 1969, and he disappears for 5 years. He only comes back in early 1975, bringing with him Montagnard refugees, as well as a pair of young mercenaries. That's all comes out bit by bit throughout the series. But he's in pretty bad shape, falling apart, much like the city is. He's working as a fixer for a lawyer who's the sister of his friend who died in the 173rd Airborne in Vietnam, his former roommate. The book starts out kind of slow. If you want your thrillers with blood and guts on the first page. Later books in the series have that, but this one, I wanted to do a character arc. He's taking pictures, compromising pictures of a mobster, but then the story, as all stories do, start getting worse and worse. And I'd have to say the climactic scene in this book is the most complicated, technically climactic scene I've ever written, taking place in the old Nabisco factory, which is now Chelsea Market, the most expensive place in Manhattan. Back then, it was pretty much an abandoned place where the Oreo cookie was invented. It's a pretty brutal climactic scene. These are some of the blurbs from my earlier Green Beret books, Stephen Coons, Webb Griffin, various reviews for the books. These are the books that are out now. New York Minute's the first, followed by Lawyers, Guns, and Money, Walk on the Wild Side, Hell of a Town, and No Court. If you notice, I'm using the titles of songs for the books because they apply to the story. The next one's going to be Shelter from the Storm. And here's my background and my website, and hit the QR code. It'll take you to the website. All my fiction is on the fiction page, my nonfiction on that page. I also have a page of free slideshows on a whole bunch of topics, including this slideshow and a lot of survival information, free survival information if you're interested. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the book.